I watched Portland go up against Houston last night. James Harden dropped 42 points, two key 3-point shots in the last couple of minutes. So the man is the MVP. There's no debating. I'm not saying he's the best player in the world. That's LeBron James. I'm not saying he's better than Kevin Durant, because he's not. I'm certainly not saying he's better than Anthony Davis, because he is not. But I don't want to hear about Anthony Davis as an MVP from New Orleans when there's 16 games worse than Houston. I don't want to hear about it. I know Anthony Davis is big time. I know he's surreal. I know in 2 years we'll be calling him the best player on the planet, if not sooner. But I'm here to tell you something right now. The kind of year that James Harden is having, it's spectacular. And everybody wants to point to, and like my man Max Kellerman wants to point to, hey, you know what, James Harden is a liability on the defensive side of the ball. Well, then what the hell does Steve Nash ever get MVP for? He couldn't guard anybody. No disrespect to Steve Nash, who I'm very fond of. He's a great offensive player, and I'm happy he's in the Hall of Fame. But the bottom line is that wasn't Steve Nash's game. He couldn't defend anybody. Dude salivated at the mouth the second they saw Steve Nash sticking him. And sometimes a great offense buffers you defensively because it makes opposing offenses tighter. Because they know that when it's their turn to play defense, they can't stop you. Let's not forget that factor when it comes to Houston because of what James Harden brings to the table. The man is sensational. And there is no debate any longer. As far as I'm concerned, James Harden is the league MVP. And speaking of MVP, to the NFL and to the NBA Players Association, could you please get rid of that ridiculous players ceremony? I understand you want to be independent and establish your own thing and all of that other stuff. That is nonsense. Finding out after the season's over who's the league MVP and having some ceremony where Russell Westbrook is sitting there and celebrating with his contemporaries. I'm sure he appreciated that. I'm sure it was very, very nice gesture. But here's the bottom line and the reality. 18 to 20,000 people walked into an arena 41 nights a year last year during the regular season in Oklahoma City to watch Russell Westbrook play. Don't you think it would have been nice if the typical traditional stuff happened where you get honored with the MVP award and then you go to mid-court while you're still in the playoffs and you get to host a damn trophy in front of all of those fans who have been cheering you on all year long? I understand the Maverick mentality and the level of independence that the Players Association wants to display. Believe me, I get it. But damn, does it have to be with everything? Can't we come together on something? We got the Players Tribune and Richard Sherman writing, the nuances that are, of what transpired with his personal contract negotiations with the San Francisco 49ers. I get it. I understand. You don't want to leave it to the media to tell your story. You want to tell it. I get it. I understand it. Ain't gonna do you any good because the media is gonna still speculate about it anyway, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, that has nothing to do with what happened with the league MVP award last year in the NBA. James Harden wins the league MVP award this year. It should be celebrated at the Toyota Center with those 18 to 20,000 people that have showed up 41 nights this year to cheer him on and celebrate him. It shouldn't be at some damn banquet with dudes he played against giving him a standing ovation in some room with a few hundred people. They ain't the ones that showed up for 41 nights a year to cheer this man on. That's Oklahoma. That was Houston. That's the Toyota Center. When James Harden gets the MVP this year, and he most certainly had better get it, that's where we should be watching him celebrate and hoisting that MVP award. It's just that simple. I mean, thank God these people are not writing scripts for television or movies. You'd get no damn ratings. No anybody walking through the turnstiles to patronize your product. You're taking the chair. You're taking the zest and the sizzle out of it. Michelle Roberts, CP3, Chris Paul. I love these people. They're great people. But this MVP award celebration at a banquet aired by TNT, that doesn't cut it. The MVP, which will and should be James Harden this year. Have your celebration, have your press conference and all of that stuff, and then after that, you give that man this trophy. You have that Commissioner Adam Silver bring that trophy to midcourt at the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas, and you give that man that trophy in front of those 18 to 20,000 fans that have been cheering him and his team on all year long. That's what you do. That's the right thing to do. Period. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. So we don't play basketball now. We're not just administrative officials anymore now. Now we know what's box office. Now we know what resonates, or we just simply don't care. That's what we're doing now? I'm sorry I digressed from my subject on the NFL. And Houston and their win over Portland last night and how they're now the prohibitive favorites in some people's eyes in the Western Conference. But that was just on my mind, damn it. I had to get it off my chest. I get tired of people trying to turn stuff into just business as usual when in fact the reason why you have a business is because of the interest your product generates. Like the roar of the crowd and the cheer of the crowd. And the euphoria associated with it doesn't matter. It matters. It matters. Do the right thing. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio in a minute.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
How? ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. 33 minutes past hour number one back here in the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, 888-729-3776 is always the number to call. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Sam Darnold, projected top pick in the NFL draft at the quarterback spot, participating at USC right now, going through his pro day. This is what we're watching. A whole bunch of scouts out there watching him. Everybody's watching him perform. He's a big boy. Looks made to be a quarterback. That much I will say. I have to acknowledge at least that much. By the way, gonna talk NBA, gonna get into that boxing stuff since Triple G called out Canelo Alvarez. All that and more is coming up as the show progresses today. You're listening live to Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Joey in L.A. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Hey, good morning, Stephen A. Thanks again for taking my call.
All right, no problem. Go ahead.
All right, New York Giants fan here, as we discussed yesterday. This is what I think the Giants should do with the with the second pick in this order. Number one, if Saquon Barkley is available, you take him. Quentin Nelson, I'd be okay with taking him if Barkley is off the board at number one. But what I think they will do is they will trade the pick, given in the wake of what the Jets gave up to move up 3 spots to number 3. The Giants can get a king's ransom for number 2, and I think they will do that with Buffalo due to the connection between Dave Gettleman and Brandon Beane from their days in Carolina.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why would you trade down with Buffalo?
If you can get a king's ransom for it, why not?
Yeah, the king's ransom. I'm just not sure you can. It depends. But let me tell you this. If you could get a king's ransom from Buffalo, why not keep the king's ransom for yourself if you're the New York Giants? Because your needs are just as glaring, if not more so, than Buffalo's. Remember, Buffalo was in the playoff last year. Buffalo's got LaShawn McCoy. Buffalo's got a respectable defense. Buffalo's retooling and what have you, and they need some help. But there's no question that the Giants have greater needs than Buffalo. Why would I help them out?
Well, by getting a king's ransom, because we do have multiple needs besides quarterback, as you've touched on, getting more picks will enable us to do that. Mm-hmm. Buffalo, I believe there will be a sense of urgency. If there is a particular quarterback they're eyeing that they may see the Jets as a threat to get, they will want to trade ahead of their division foe in order to get that quarterback.
Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is this. When I watch the Browns, for example, and I think about, here's what I think about. I think about stuff like this. I watch the Browns that had their share picks, all right? And I look at them and I say to myself, they traded down for what people would term to be king's ransoms and things of that nature. And where did it get them? As far as I'm concerned, if somebody out there is the best player, that's who I'm going for. That's who I'm going for. That's just how I feel about it. I'm doing whatever I can to hold on to that best player, particularly if it's at the quarterback position. And I have somebody I feel that confident about as a quarterback, because that's your biggest need. Every team practically needs a quarterback. Without a quarterback, there's just but so much you're going to be able to do. And that's my issue.
Every team does need one. You are correct about that, and I totally see where you're coming from. I honestly think the talk that the Giants are looking at quarterback is a smokescreen to see what sort of offers they can field for the number 2 pick.
I got you. I appreciate the call, man. I understand. I can respect that perspective. No question about it. Let's go. Let's go to Matthew in Florida. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Matthew?
Hey, Stephen A. How you doing this morning or afternoon, I guess, on the East Coast?
What's going on, man? Talk to me.
Yeah, well, I've been looking at this. I'm a Browns fan, I'm not going to lie, and I can't say what they're going to do at 1 or 4, whether they're going to take running back or Darnold 1 overall, or they're going to trade out. What I can say is the history of Hugh Jackson as a coach is a man who has traded for Tyrod Taylor, who said he wanted Tyrod last year. He started Terrell Pryor in Oakland, and he was Bobby Petrino's offensive coordinator in Atlanta the year that they were supposed to fix Michael Vick, and we all know what went down that year.
Well, I don't know if we can blame coaching on Michael Vick when Michael Vick was the one that came out and admitted that he used to take the playbook and throw it in the trunk of his car.
Oh, exactly. My point is that Hugh Jackson seems to like a type of quarterback that seems to be mobile and have a big arm, and that Lamar Jackson is the guy in this draft that looks like the kind of quarterback that Hugh Jackson has gone with in the past.
But they say that he's incredibly raw, not accurate, and they got him like 5th on their draft board behind the 4 aforementioned in Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield, not necessarily in those orders. So that's what their belief is. And if I'm looking at it from that perspective, I can't ignore that.
Yep, and I've listened to Chris Sims, and I've done a little bit of research on myself, and the long short of it is Allen had less of a completion percentage. Darnold got worse with his completion after he lost Juju to the Steelers. Devontae Parker went to Miami, and then Lamar Jackson actually improved by 2 to 3% accuracy each year. Mm-hmm. And Allen and Rosen were both injured in college, and Lamar has injury questions, but wasn't actually injured.
Well, you got to remember, you're looking at Lamar Jackson in terms of his overall effectiveness, the dual threat that he is, the fact that he's better than anybody you could come up with his feet. And we all know that. And in today's NFL, that can't be devalued. The flip side to it, however, is that when you look at a guy like Darnold, who's only had, 24 starts in his career, so he doesn't have that much experience, but the arm strength, the size, the velocity, the fact that he can make any NFL throw, that he's considered athletic, that he's considered more polished than the other guys. And you take that into account along with the tremendous upside that he has. I'm looking at him at Pro Day right now, and I got to tell you, he looks made to be an NFL quarterback in terms of the size, the body type, and the arm strength on him. He does look made to be an NFL quarterback. And if he's got that kind of polish, I don't know if that's something that we can ignore, sir.
Yeah, my phone's breaking up, but yeah, you're right. I've watched Darnold play, and sometimes he looks like he could be Brett Favre. And other times he looks like he could be Jake Locker.
We'll see, but the other thing we have to take into consideration is the fact that even after acquiring Tyrod Taylor, Hugh Jackson was on this morning on ESPN LA saying that the Browns should definitely take a quarterback. The problem is that I love Hugh as a person, but you got to go by your resume too. The man's 1-31 as a head coach the last 2 seasons in Cleveland. I understand it ain't his fault that they lost that many games, but damn, you're attached to it for a 1-31 record in 2 years, fresh off an 0-16 season. So what you want might not be a priority to me if I'm the rest of the Browns hierarchy. It might be what I think is best. I'm just saying. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We'll continue talking about this. Plus, we'll be talking about James Harden. Is he your MVP? And are the Houston Rockets should they be the legitimate favorites to come out of the Western Conference? All that and more up next with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it.
Back to the phones we go right here on Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Let's get right to it. Let's go to Kentrell in Atlanta. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Kentrell?
Hey, Stephen A. I got two quick questions. So my first question was, who do you consider your biggest dark horse to be in the Western Conference playoffs this year?
Dark horse?
Dark horse. Portland. Pelicans.
Portland. Yes.
Portland. Okay, my second question was, I was hearing what you were saying yesterday about your Knicks, how you think they need a face for their franchise for someone to talk.
That's the Knicks. That was the Knicks.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the Knicks. I'm a big Mavericks fan, and I didn't have a problem with them saying that they were tanking because I knew what future we were going towards. Would you mind that with the Knicks, considering how long it's been since they have any direction to their franchise?
Of course I would mind, because the Knicks have been tanking. They just haven't told us for decades. You got to be crazy. Have a nice day. Let's go to Patrick in Seattle. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A. This is a long-time listener, first-time call. I'll get straight to the point. You seem really passionate about James Harden being the MVP. I got to ask, if you take him off the Rockets, you got Eric Gordon filling in the starting lineup. But if you take Damian Lillard or Anthony Davis out of their starting lineups, I mean, where are those teams? Will we even be talking about the Pelicans or Blazers?
Not at all, but they're not 57-14. I mean, the fact of the matter is the level of success that Houston has enjoyed. I got nothing but respect for Damian Lillard. I've got nothing but respect for Anthony Davis, who's a superstar. But this particular season, James Harden, to me, is the MVP without question.
I don't know, Stephen. I just feel like this is a apology tour from, I feel like last year, after they lost 4-1 to the Rockets in the first round last year.
Let me stop you right there. I don't give a damn what you think about whether or not this is an apology or whatever the case may be. I had James Harden as my MVP last year until the last 3 weeks of the season. And then when Russell Westbrook came on strong, Russell Westbrook deserved it. And I never apologized to James Harden for changing course and giving that kind of props to Russell Westbrook, because it was that close. And James Harden faded when Russell Westbrook did not. And that is that. This year, there's no such thing that has occurred. They're basically going to be the number one seed. James Harden has clearly led the way. When Chris Paul, and Clint Capella on the court at the same time healthy, they've lost a grand total of one game this entire year. They've won 23 of their last 24. There's nothing to discuss here. Nothing.
I respect it, Stephen A. You have a good rest of your day, all right, man?
You do the same. Have a good day. Sean in Long Island, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A., how are you?
I'm good. Talk to me.
How do you feel about the Jets, if Saquon's available, getting him at the third pick and then possibly getting Lamar Jackson or Baker Mayfield in the second round?
If you're the Jets?
Yeah.
I'd love that. The problem is I don't think Saquon Barkley would be available at number 3, number 1. And number 2, and more importantly, the Jets desperately need a quarterback. McCown's going to be 39 years old if he's not already. You have no quarterback to speak of. The only person you had on the roster outside of McCown with any kind of experience was Bryce Petty. Okay? This kid out of Christian, whatever his name is, and I say that jokingly because the fact of the matter is that the man hasn't played a single game. Hasn't played a single game for the New York Jets. Nothing at all. And so when I look at it from that perspective, if you're the New York Jets, you have no choice. You got to get a quarterback. Because you never had a quarterback. You haven't had a quarterback worth mentioning since Richard Todd in the 80s. That's really what this comes down to. There's no way to deny that. So they got to get a quarterback. They don't need Saquon Barkley. They can't afford to grab Saquon Barkley over a quarterback, whereas the Giants can because they have Eli Manning. And that is the difference. Other than that, what are you going to do? I mean, this kid, Christian Hackenberg, hasn't played a game since coming out of Penn State. Bryce Petty, now you got Teddy Bridgewater on a 1-year deal. No, you need a quarterback. Period. Appreciate the call. Daniel in Missouri, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Mr. Stephen A., thank you for taking my call. Wanted to call and say the Rockets are not a contender. Nobody is a contender until they can push the Warriors. We're talking about 73-9, added Durant, and I'm a Thunder fan.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. If they're not a contender, who is?
Right now, nobody. Until we see, once, Golden State's going to get healthy. They're going to get rolling by mid-second round. Third round, they're going to hit their stride. And, there's no contender. This is the best team we've ever seen.
With all due respect, that's a very ignorant statement on your part. Just because you're not going to beat the Warriors or you may not be better than the Warriors doesn't mean that you're a contender. It means you're not a champion, but it doesn't mean you're not a contender. You win 57 games plus. You're the number one seed. You've been smoking everybody, and your style seems tailor-made to go up against the reigning defending NBA champions. That would make you a contender. Now, again, you probably ain't going to beat them. I'm not picking them to beat Golden State, where some other people may have. But when you say they're not a contender, you're just engaging in hyperbole, and you're not being respectful to the competition.
Okay, I want to be respectful to the competition. They are a good team. They are in first place. They've earned that. But Paul and Harden haven't done anything in the playoffs. No one on the rest of the roster has. 2 to 3 years, if the Thunder stays together, that's a championship team.
Got you. I got you, and I appreciate it. And by the way, to the previous caller suggesting what the Jets should do in the second round, they traded both of their second-round picks away to move up 3 spots. They traded it away to the Indianapolis Colts. So the Jets don't have a second-round pick. Just wanted to make sure that I point that out. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. That's the number to call into the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hour number 2, we'll get more into this NBA stuff because that was a terrific Portland Trailblazers Houston Rockets game. Obviously, everybody's talking about the Rockets like they should be favorites, just discounting Golden State. Do you believe Golden State is healthy? Or, I'm sorry, do you believe they're injured? Or do you believe that, guess what, all they're doing is just getting additional rest because they know they need to be ready come postseason time? And if that is the case, what does that say to you about the Warriors? And go say, by the way, Trae Young, he was on First Take this morning. Appreciated him coming on. We talked to him about his prospects. I'm going to tell you why both New York and L.A. should want this kid. That's right. I said it. And L.A. I said it. Obviously, that's something to talk about. And, of course, Triple G calling out Saul Canelo Alvarez, calling him a cheat, along with Oscar De La Hoya himself. Was that wise of him to do? And as of right now, do you think that this fight could potentially be in jeopardy because Triple G opened his mouth? I think all of those things are legitimate questions. They're questions that need to be answered, and they will. They will be. Right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Hour number 2 in the house. Up next. Don't touch that dial.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.